Hey, welcome to Raising Deaf Kids, and I'm so excited to welcome our guest today, the author of the Mighty Mila books, Katie. Welcome, Katie, to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I think most people already know your books because I've seen, like I was talking about earlier before we started recording, I've seen a lot of your books floating around in the parents groups, which is great. Everyone is like recommending your books and they are so cute and so fun. But I am actually curious, and for anyone who doesn't know a little bit about your background, and were you an author before this?
No, no, I wasn't. And honestly, like I laugh because people ask me that a lot, and it was never something that kind of crossed my mind. I went to school for accounting, and I've actually been at a professional consulting firm for over 20 years. I did accounting for a while. I switched over into project management around financial transactions, which I've been doing. Still work there. And no, I hadn't thought about writing. And I've always been a creative person. And I think that it was really the passion and the mission to create a fun children's book featuring a deaf main character where the story isn't about the disability, it's about an authentic representation of a deaf child who is so much more than just their hearing abilities, and I wanted to put a fiery, spirited, imaginative little girl that just happens to be deaf and have cochlear implants, which is inspired by my daughter Mila, out into the world so that deaf kids could feel represented, empowered, and then also so that there was a higher likelihood that typical hearing families or typical hearing kids would pick up the book and relate to the character because Mighty Mila, the first book, is about a little girl who's trying to prove she's a big kid and she wants to do it all on her own. She has to learn to ask for help. And sure, her deafness and cochlear implants are kind of woven into the story, but it's not the focus of it. And I think that that's part of what's made it kind of really been received so well by the deaf and the hearing community alike. And back to your original question, like, writing Mighty Mila is really just a vehicle for getting kind of that message out there. And I think just being like a creative person by nature and knowing that like these books needed to be out there is just kind of what lit a fire under me to just figure it out, figure out how to do it all. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am now, as an author, which is still fun and funny for me to hear. But yeah, so I'm a accountant, CPA, project manager, author, mom,
Yeah.
lots of different hats.
That's amazing. It's so interesting because being an author, I'm sure, is like almost complete opposite from being an accountant. It uses like I know because I am not good with numbers, but I can do the writing and the creative side. I couldn't imagine me at like going to the like accounting side. Just it's like a total brain switch. But that is really interesting that you did that. And, I think we talked about this a little bit, but yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about is, why did books come to you? Because, there's a lot of things that you could do coaching, you could do toy. I mean, there's so many things you could do in this space, but what is special to you, or what was your thought process behind like this needs to be specifically a book versus just even like talking about it on social media? Because a lot of people are just like creators and they talk about their kids on social media and their journey, and that's fine too. There's a lot of avenues that you could go. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious how books specifically came to be, although I think they're fantastic.
Yeah. It's actually an interesting backstory because Mila, she started losing her hearing at 1 year old. And so we have a phenomenal teacher of the deaf who we've been working, she's almost 8 now. We've been working with her since she's 1. And she's become like family to us. And when Mila was going through the process of losing her hearing, it was becoming progressively worse to the point where by the time she was 2.5, she was severe to profoundly deaf and qualifying for cochlear implants. And I went to Ashley our teacher of the deaf, and was asking her, like, what books are out there that I can get to help explain to a 2.5-year-old that she's going to have to get a surgical procedure and start hearing differently, right? Like, you can't get into too much complexity with a 2.5-year-old. And I didn't want her going into it being, scared or anything. It's a lot, right? And I know that kids learn so much through books as part of a lot of children's daily routines, right? And it was for us. So I was asking Ashley, and she recommended a couple of books. And I was getting the books, and she said to me, you know, Ashley said that she's like, I've been thinking for years about, I want to write a book. Like, I don't feel like there's a great book out there that is a really soft, happy, upbeat, like positive message about a child going from identifying hearing loss, getting hearing aids, going to cochlear implants, basically Mila's journey. She said, would you mind if I wrote the book based on Mila's journey? And I said, yeah, I know we'd be honored. And Ashley Makovec, she wrote Mila Gets Her Super Ears and published it, self-published it through Amazon. And it's more journey, like hearing loss journey focus, and it's great. And I think for me, that was like part of what set the course, for me, because it was the first time I realized that self-publishing is something that somebody could do. Like, I think before that, if I had really thought about it, I'd been like, oh, well, I could never write a book. Like, I didn't go to school for journalism. I didn't do that. And it was just never an achievable avenue that I would have ever thought of. So I think the fact that Ashley went and figured it out and did it was the first step to me realizing, like, if Ashley can do it, like, I could do this. And then it was, the whole idea really kind of came fully to fruition when after Mila got her cochlear implants, we were reading, these books that I had gotten at nighttime, and a bunch of other books. And we were reading this other one book in particular that it didn't have any characters with hearing loss. It had tons of characters in it. And she got annoyed that none of the characters had cochlear implants. She's like, why does nobody in this have cochlear implants? And so she started pulling a bunch of other books out of her bookshelf. She couldn't find anybody in any of those books. And I said, well, we have these other books, right? She's like, no, but those are about going to the doctor. Like, how come there's no one in any of my fun books? And like, I was like, oh, you're right. Like, these books that had been so helpful to us, that had deaf, hard of hearing characters going through the medical journey, getting their hearing aids, getting their cochlear implants, going to the audiologist, they were great. I mean, and they are great. Like, she still pulls them out even now from time to time. But they served like a certain purpose. Like, they helped her feel connected and understanding that other kids go through these medical procedures, but there wasn't that other piece of the story of like, all right, well, that's just one part of their life. Like, now what? Like, there's a million other things that hard of hearing kids do other than go to the doctors.
Yeah.
Like, where
And
are
it's
they?
a small part, like
Yeah,
it's just the
exactly.
beginning part of your whole life, right?
Right, exactly. And so that kind of combined with me realizing that, like, just a regular person can do this, from seeing Ashley do it. I think putting two and two together made me realize, like, okay, let me do this through a book. Like, there needs to be these types of books out there. And that's why I channel my messaging through a book, because I thought that there was a real gap in the market that needed to be filled for all kids.
Yeah. And, that's something I was listening to a few podcasts earlier this week about like publishing books and writing books. And, the conversation was really interesting. Like you brought up too, is that one of the good things, I guess, about the internet is that the bar is really low to that you can self-publish your own books and put them on Amazon, where it used to be that you like had no choice but to go through a publisher, which meant you had to, have a certain caliber. I mean, not everybody was able to just tell a story and put it out there. Which means, probably until this day and age, like none of these books and other books that have been written and self-published by other parents would ever, be able to get out there. And they are so fantastic for kids, like you said, and that's great that you were talking about, reading books to help prepare your kids for cochlear implant surgery or hearing loss or hearing aids, because that our journey was different because both I have two boys with cochlear implants, but they were both born with profound deafness. So they had hearing loss from the beginning. And so for us, it wasn't a conversation. They got their cochlear implants when they were 11 months, but they were literally babies. There was no conversation, and there wouldn't have been anyway. But this is definitely important to know for parents and kids who are, going through hearing loss when kids are older. I can imagine, I don't know if you remember, you probably do, when your daughter was going through, I can imagine it can be like a bit scary for kids if they all of a sudden start not being able to hear where they could hear before. Did you, I'm just kind of curious about, kind of what you guys went through with Mila. It sounds like the books really helped like process through
Yeah,
having
yeah.
hearing loss.
You know,
But I know she was really young, still really young too.
right. And it's funny. I haven't really thought back about how she, I don't know how much she was aware of the fact that she was losing her hearing, right?
Yeah,
Like,
she was still
she,
pretty young.
right. Like, she would get frustrated. Like, one of the ways that we could tell in a way, that her hearing had maybe dropped between audiology appointments, which we had pretty frequently once we realized it was starting to drop. Like, I could see her getting frustrated, and maybe acting out a little bit because she wasn't hearing as well. But her compensation skills were insane. Like, she compensated really well. Like, she was lip reading exceptionally well. We did start noticing that she was losing like S's on words that she was saying, like all she's became he. Like, she
Yeah.
just started losing the high frequency sounds from her vocabulary,
Mhm.
because she wasn't hearing them anymore. Like, leading up to the surgery, for cochlear implants, one of the things we did, like I said, was read books about characters getting cochlear implants, or even just like some books about, you know, typical hearing characters going to the hospital or things like that. I made like a calendar for her that showed like how it was gonna, like, with pictures and stuff that showed, and I talked to her in advance about, okay, this is where we're gonna go and get, cochlear implants, because she was familiar with that term now once we started reading the books. And then I was put like, it showed like for 2 weeks that she won't be able to hear anything. So that was one of the things I tried to prep her with. Like, you're not going to be able to hear anything. You're not going to be able to hear anything until, because, between implantation and activation,
Yeah. Hmm.
everything's off. Um,
Definitely.
and so that was one of the things that I worked on stressing with her, is like her understanding, like, it's going to be quiet, but it's okay. And I bought like a ton of like, modeling clay and this and that. And at the end of the day, she just wanted to watch like Frozen over and over, even though she couldn't hear it. She knew every word by heart, right? Like, and
Oh
so
yeah.
she still went to school during the time between activation
Okay.
and between implantation activation, all that stuff. She adapted incredibly well. And then once she got activated, she was actually understanding what we were saying within days. So we were fortunate that she had a very smooth, journey into, a different way of hearing.
Yeah. And I love that you shared those tips, because I know a lot of parents who are going through cochlear implants or like hearing loss a little bit later with their kids, ask questions about this. I see them all the time. Like, how, especially like, how do I explain that there's not going to be any hearing? Is there going to be any hearing? Because you don't know really when it's your first time going through. And how do I explain all this to my kids? And it sounds like you did a great job of prepping beforehand, which I definitely always recommend. I do with my kids still all the time. I'm always explaining to all of them what we're doing, where we're going, what we expect, prepping kids before, like, even going to like Walmart, which we're going later to today, which we've been to a million times. I'm big on communicating to kids like what's going to come up, no matter if they have like typical hearing or they have hearing loss. And um, the stickers that you use in the visuals, we love visual systems
Yeah.
around here. So for like extra communication, I use them all over my house with my kids too. So that's really great that you were able to do that.
Yeah.
And I am really kind of curious about the message of Mighty Mila, and I really like it because I was interested in what you said earlier about how you wanted a story that was a little girl going about her life and then like kind of has hearing loss, but it's not the central part of the story. And I'd love to talk about the messages because I think that's a really strong message to put out to kids because I have seen a lot in like the messages and the books. I think it's changing a little bit, but that it is so focused on like the medical part and it's so focused on like the hearing loss, which I always say about my two kids is like if I was going to give you a rundown of 100 things about my kids, hearing loss would be one of the last things that I would talk about. It just we have it, you know, we work with it in our family, but it doesn't in any way kind of like define my kids or, you know, there's so much more than just
Yep.
hearing loss. So I'm really curious to talk about, you know, the message of how you kind of like integrate the hearing loss into the story, but really the story's focused on life.
Yeah, yeah, and that was really important for again, that was really important for me to do that because the goal was to create a fun story that, deaf and hard of hearing kids could relate to and feel empowered by, but then also that typical hearing kids would want to read and also see that we're all more alike than different. And so on the surface, the story is about, the first book, Mighty Mila, is about a little girl that wants to prove that she can be a big kid and she's going to do everything on her own. She's not going to ask for help, right? And so, no surprise, she can do some things. She kind of figures some things out, and then she hits a wall and can't figure out how to ride her bike, and she ends up having to ask for help, right? So that's just the surface story, but the underlying message is really about trying things on your own, but also recognizing that you have a community of people around you that love you and want to support you, and weaving in that message of advocacy, right? Because that's something that all kids need to learn how to advocate for themselves, especially deaf, hard of hearing kids, to advocate for themselves. Like it's okay to ask for help, ask for help, ask for help, whether it's riding your bike or the fact that you didn't hear something in class and you need to raise your hand, right? And so weaving in like just the fact that that underlying message around asking for help is okay. There's people that love you and want to help you. And then the cochlear implant references are just like kind of speckled throughout the book. Like, when she goes to put it on her helmet, her bicycle helmet, she's like, I have to put it on carefully so I don't knock off my cochlear implants. Or she's trying to find her brother playing hide and seek, and she's like, I close my eyes and I listen to all the wonderful sounds. It's a little more challenging for me to tell where they're coming from because with the localization of sounds and that challenge, right? So as they're just kind of dropped in, or like when she's eating her cereal in the morning that she made her own breakfast, right? Like that, she loves that she can hear the loud crunch it makes when she chews. So it's just little references that like I don't think stand out as being like, oh,
Mhm.
that's weird. You're getting too like preachy or medical or whatever on me, but it's just
Yeah.
part of her world and her experience. And then Mighty Mila Dream Job, which is the second book that I've just releasing like now. That's all about her exploring what she wants to be when she grows up for career day. And she wants to be everything, and she can't figure it out. And she gets all upset, and she ultimately realizes that she can be everything and anything she wants to be. And that one kind of came about because I was talking to a friend. We were talking about the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? And how it's like a daunting question. And she was saying how like her daughter gets like anxiety when she's asked that because she's like, I don't know, like I'm 6 years old. And so
Yeah.
the message being like, you
That's a
can be
big
a lot of
long
things.
question for a 6-year-old. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, like I just rattled off, like I'm a CPA, project manager, author, mom, like it's not just one thing. And so the
Yeah.
book shows that like the end, spoiler alert, but the end is that she decides that she's gonna be a whole combination of all the things she enjoys. And maybe she's gonna be a doctor that does art and plays soccer and whatever, right? So it's kind of like de-stressing that question, making it fun, but then also really the underlying message and like the real important message come through is that like you may face hardships. Like in the book, there's a scene where she's having a family dance party and she's saying, music sounds a little different to me. It's a little more challenging for me to understand like the tune, but I love it and nothing will stop me from dancing, right? And so really weaving in that like you're going to hit challenges in life, but nothing can stop you. Like nothing's going to stop you. You can achieve everything and anything, and any kid can, right? And so that's, you know, that's really the message. Talking about messages, right? Like for that second book.
Yeah, I think that is a great message and so important for kids, you know, growing up. Like you said, I think there's so much pressure just to go down one avenue. Also, and I think I'm learning as I go on in years and have kids and just progress. I've already had like two jobs, like careers. I'm moving on to another one. I mean, and that you just do, that was something that no one like told me. And I think that's kind of changing with our generation. Cause I think before, like it really was, you kind of like go into a job and like you work there and you stay at this company and that was a thing. And now it's just, as I'm learning, you just evolve and you do different things at different stages of life. And you have different interests at different stages of life. And maybe you keep doing the one thing and you add on other things, and it's okay to, you know, intermingle all of your different
Right.
interests. You know, even if they're just hobbies, like you also don't have to like monetize everything
Exactly.
either.
Right.
And I think that's great for kids to hear, is that they don't have to just pick one thing. Cause I mean, I agree. I did like 3 majors in college and 2 different masters because I was the kid that wanted to do
Yeah.
several different things. And I still do, which I think is why I'm doing this now. This podcast, because I get to have different conversations. And I was also the kid who had a hard time in college student picking just one
Yeah.
job to say you're going to do that for the rest of your life. I'm like, what if I change my mind? And I already did
I
change
know.
my mind. So I think that's a really great message to give, you know, to kids, that you really can like be anything and different things at different stages of life too, which is kind of the extended version of that.
Yeah.
Um, but I would love to talk. So something that we really like talking about, and kind of, you know, I'm exploring with my like 8-year-old as he gets older now, and my 5-year-old is helping your kids become like advocates and leaders. And it seems like you do a great job. I know I didn't see the timestamp, so this maybe it had been like a year or two ago, but I was, you know, just looking around your Instagram just to see what you guys, you know, were doing. And I saw that Mila did like a presentation for her class.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. That was
and I
just, that
thought,
was
and I was
recently.
like, oh my gosh, that is such a big step and so great. So I would love to talk to the parents out there who are always asking, like, can you know, people say and tell parents, okay, you need to help your kids advocate for themselves. Okay, like what does that mean?
Right.
You know, most parents are like, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's like a
What,
big
like, this
lofty
is such
word,
a
but like
big
what?
thing. Yeah, it is. Well, and you know, I guess it could have different meanings to different people, but you know, what does that mean practically speaking and at different ages? Because I believe it needs to be age appropriate as well. But what are some of the things that you've kind of done to help Mila? I think, do you have 2 kids with hearing loss
I
too?
do. My
Yeah.
daughter, my youngest, Sophia, one of the book characters also, her hearing loss was identified. Well, she started losing her hearing at 3.5. So she's
Okay.
almost 5 now. So she got hearing aids about a year ago. So
Okay.
yep. But she doesn't have hearing aids in the book because I wrote the books before she had the hearing aids. So maybe
It's
another.
fine. Just
Yeah.
gonna have to do another book. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I know.
But
Yeah,
yeah, how you start working with your kids even at different ages to become advocates, become leaders, you know,
yeah,
and advocate for themselves and become leaders in their classrooms.
I know that's something I'm always kind of thinking about too, and always even asking like our teacher, the deaf and speech therapist and everything for like ideas and
Yeah.
the thing you mentioned about Mila presenting in the classroom, I think that's one of the biggest things that she's done, and she
It's
loved it.
big.
Loved it. So we happened to in our school, we happen to have like a week-long celebration of differences in disabilities. And
Amazing.
each grade, yes, is great. I was lucky to be the PTA chair for it the last couple of years and involved and very intimately involved in the deafness program piece of it. each grade learns about a different difference or disability. And right now the second grade is learns about deafness and hearing loss.
That's cool.
Mila happens to be in second grade. And so previously, before she was in second grade, I would go in and read Mighty Mila and talk to the kids about it. And this year I asked her, I said, do you want to do a little presentation about yourself to your classmates? And she was like, yes, I want to do it. And she, previous to this, like in kindergarten, first grade, even in preschool, Ashley, our teacher of the deaf, has done little mini presentations with her. So
Yeah,
I want parents, anyone that's listening, this doesn't have to be some formal program in the school, right?
definitely.
I think what I would suggest is in September is a really good time. One is Deaf Awareness Month. Secondly, your kid's just starting school. So really good time to open up the conversation with classmates that may or may not have been in the class with your child previously, or maybe your child is new to having hearing loss and hearing devices or whatever. It's a really nice time to open up that conversation and let the child kind of talk about themselves, but also give the opportunity for their classmates to ask questions. So what we did is, and actually I worked with our teacher of the deaf to create a template presentation that is available for free for everybody on my website. So it's
Oh, great.
Mighty Mila, www.mightymila.com/resources. And it's free. It's called
Perfect.
All About Mighty Me, because I realized how powerful this was for Mila, and I wanted there to be very low barriers for other parents to be able to do this. So our entire presentation is up there for you to grab and
Oh,
download
wow.
and totally edit for your kid.
Perfect. We're definitely going to put that in the
Again,
show notes for sure.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I want parents to be able to use it. And so basically, it started off with her just talking a little bit about herself, nothing about her hearing loss, just who is she, right? A little bit about what's her favorite things, what's her favorite snack, where's she going on vacation. And then it gets into oh, and by the way, here are some things interesting about me. I think she put I can do a cartwheel and a round off. I have a younger sister and an older brother, and I have hearing loss and cochlear implants. It's just one thing, right? Let's just
Mm-hmm.
start off right off the bat that this is just one little piece about what makes me me. And then
Yeah.
presentation goes into a little bit about talking about her hearing loss journey, the fact that she was 1 when she started losing hearing, a bit about hearing aids, a bit about cochlear implants, about the microphone that the classmates see the teachers wearing, the FM, or I think they're being called hat devices now, that the teachers wear. And then there's a whole slide also about how can you be good friends and help me hear you better. And it's all about don't muffle your words, don't turn around and talk to me. I need to see your it helps me to see your lips. Tap me on the shoulder, or just please don't ever say never mind, please repeat yourself, things like that. And so Mila covered a little bit of it. She was shy, but she was excited about it. And then I covered the rest of it for her. So I think that parents can do this with their kids. And even if, kids are at different levels of shyness and willingness
Mm-hmm.
to share about it. So obviously follow your kids,
Yeah.
comfort level. But I think it's something, even if it's even great if they're just sitting up there and you as a parent, or even if you have a teacher that can help walk them
Mm-hmm.
through it. I think it's really nice for them to have that chance to talk about themselves in a really empowering conversation, and then also give the classmates a chance to ask questions. Because if you do it in September, the beginning of the year, or when soon after the child gets hearing devices,
Mm-hmm.
it's a nice way to open it up in a constructive manner so that kids can ask the questions instead of not asking them and talking about potentially somebody else or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's one big advocacy thing that we've done, and I'll continue to do this with my little one, and then with Mila next year too. But it's even things like yesterday, she was going to a tryout for sports, and she
Mm-hmm.
didn't know anyone. So I talked to, I brought her up with me. I talked to the person in charge. I explained to her about our cochlear implants. And I told her in advance, I said, Mila, if you have any questions, make sure that you raise your hand and ask. I'll make sure that they
Yeah.
know about your cochlear implants and everything, but
Mm-hmm.
just make sure you always ask, right? And so I think it's just good, even just saying just feel comfortable asking to people to repeat themselves or explaining it. Like, she's not really at the point where she's going up to people, like, fully explaining everything.
Yeah.
I mean, she can if she needs to, but I tend to do that for her, with her.
Yeah. But she's so
But at
young,
some point she
you know,
will.
I mean,
Yeah.
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 I said
So,
it's a journey. I mean, that's kind of what I tell parents, and what I'm kind of seeing here is that it's um there's different levels of advocacy and being able to talk about yourself from like age 8 and 9, where our kids are up to like high school is obviously much more advanced. And so, you know, not to I think I want to caution parents to not put too much on their kids at too young of an age, because we also need to understand that they are kids. And, you know, up until probably about middle school, I haven't gotten there yet, but um, you know, you really should be the person kind of at, you know, doing most of the advocating, and being careful about like how much we put on our kids to have to like talk about themselves, you know what I mean? And making sure that we're giving them that good support at the beginning. But I think it's great. And even, you know, some other things that we just do in our classroom that don't even have to like, you know, if your kid is shy or, you know, doesn't kind of want to be the center of attention, just for some ideas from parents. I don't know if you guys do this too with your teacher of the deaf and your other supports in your school, but I know our teacher of the deaf, like goes in and has like explained the mini mic to,
mhm.
you know, each of the classrooms, and
Yeah.
they actually like which I'm okay with, they let you know, a friend wear a mini mic on the playground. They're watching them, but you know, while they're kind of playing, so that, you know, my child and their friends can communicate and talk to each other without like an adult intervening all the time. And so they're kind of learning those like social skills, and their friends are learning how to kind of like accommodate and help people with hearing loss, but it's not like a big deal. You know what I mean? And to just
That's
kind of
cool.
like organically integrate that into the classroom, which I said I'm not in there doing, but I, you know, talked about this with my IEP team, and asked them to like integrate some of those like advocacy skills in the classroom. And, you know, they're also working on like my 8-year-old. I think sometimes he gets a little like hearing fatigued during the day. And so they've been working with him to gain him to tell the teacher when he needs to have a break
Yeah.
and take them off. Because he's not quite as good or quite there, because he's so young. He's just in second grade too, just finished second grade, about, you know, raising his hand and asking. And, you know, even though we tell him he can, you know, sometimes it doesn't occur to them that they can say that. And so, you know, they've been working, and that's something that we put in our IEP, is for our IEP team and the teachers to work specifically with our kids on advocating for themselves, like taking their own mini mics up to their teachers
Yep.
in the
We do that
morning, and,
too.
you know, without
Mhm.
the teacher asking. And so these are little things that you can do, and ask for, I think, as a parent. That's not really like singling someone out if you don't want to, or, you know, putting someone in the kind of center of attention, but is kind of, what do I want to say, kind of influencing the day
Yeah,
with
I think
hearing,
those are
with different
great.
little aspects of hearing loss, which is kind of what your books do too, actually.
Yeah, we do a lot of we do those things too, and I think they are really helpful. Like she's in charge of the mic. You know, she brings it up to the teacher in
Yeah.
the morning. She gets it and she puts it. I think they help her put it on a charger and stuff like that. But we also do have built in that they do like what they call sabotage sometimes,
Mhm.
where like the teacher will be wearing a
Yes.
microphone and she'll intentionally not mute it when she goes out into the hallway or something like that, with the and teaching her
Mhm.
that if it's not muted, you have to come and tell me. And so testing to see if she's actually saying like, you didn't mute it, or not like intentionally not turning it on when she's supposed to, and looking for Mila to raise her hand and say, can you please turn the microphone on? So they do these like, they call it sabotage, whatever, to
Yeah.
like test that she's like advocating for the mic to be on and off at the appropriate times, which I think is really
Yes.
very cool. And then also like when they do like small group like things, they do have the mic in the classroom. I've never done it on a playground. I like that idea, but they do have the student that she's talking with where the microphone,
That's
especially if like a
fun.
lot of kids are talking to pairs and they're working in like teams. They either put it on the desk if there's a couple of kids, or they have the solo kid that she's working with wear the mic. And I like that it kind of gets the other children familiar, and it helps them feel like they're supporting their friend,
Mhm. Yes. And I think it also helps kind of teach kids how to kind of gracefully support someone with hearing loss or even another disability without that person having to kind of ask them all the time. You know what I mean? It kind of helps the kids start to look out for, how are ways that I can help other people? How are ways that I can make this easier for other people? And kind of getting other kids to kind of think outside of themselves a little bit, which I
Yep.
mean is great because
Yeah,
as
be a
kids,
helper, right?
kids
Exactly. Yeah.
usually like think about themselves because that's like the stage that they're at. Yeah. And how looking for ways and searching out for ways that they can be like a helper to someone else too. I feel like that is doing that for them. Um, and I also love just to ask you, if you have seen any benefit about being involved in Mila school and your kids' school, like doing the presentations, talking to the teacher, being involved with the IEP team. Have you seen any benefits for Mila or for other kids or for other parents
Oh,
or
I
for
mean,
your class
I
community
think
by
it's
you being involved? Mhm.
I think it has helped a ton, right? Like just letting the teachers know that there's open communication, that like we're all a team
Yeah.
working together. Um, it helps them feel comfortable, like coming to me with questions, and they go to a lot to the teacher of the deaf for any questions, and just really
Mhm.
just being like we're a team, we're all working on this together, like, and also like understanding. I say to the teacher, I'm like, I know you're probably not familiar with that, and that this in the beginning of the year, right? And that's fine. Like, we're happy to hear. I'm here to support like you in
Yes.
this journey to figure this all out, and obviously going in front of the class and talking to them about the hearing loss and her journey and reading Mighty Mila to them, that like directly impacts like the awareness and across like the full, the full grade. So, it's at a point where, right or wrong, like kids know who Mila. They're like Mighty Mila, like her name's not
Oh,
Mila, Mighty Mila. And so,
yeah.
it's something that's like I try to, it's a fine line, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to empower her, but I don't need her to be the spotlight all the time, right? And because I don't want it to be because of that. So like you want to advocate, but you also don't want to like call so much attention to it that it's just like starts seeming like it's the only thing about the kid. So I think we strike a good happy balance there here. Like she's a very social kid, and she's very confident. Like that's another thing I would say, like it's 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 hard. Like I hear from so many parents are like, my kid doesn't want to wear his hearing aids. He doesn't want to wear his
Yeah.
cochlear implants. And it has so much to do with personality when they get their hearing devices. It just has a lot to do. There's
Right.
a lot of factors. But like we've always like encouraged Mila to be confident about them. Like when she first got
Mhm.
her cochlear implants, we were able to choose two, we got two sets of
Okay.
the implants. So we chose a brown, which match her hair, and we chose a
Mhm.
white, which very much stand out. And when she was little, she really wasn't choosing, but like we would put the white on her. We let her choose stickers that she decorates. She puts like she has glittery headbands for retention purposes. Like they're very much there. Like you can see them. And I asked her recently, actually, now that she's like enough to like she makes decisions. Like she wears the white every day. Like we use the brown kind of
Oh,
for the water ears and stuff. And I asked her, like,
yeah.
I was like, why do you always want to wear like which ones do you like better? Like, why do you always want to wear the white? And she's like, I like the white ones the best. And I said, well, why do you like those? She's like, I like how they show up. I like how you can see them against my hair. Like I
Aw.
like that they, I can show them off better. So like that to me, I was like, oh, like my heart, like I was just my heart like exploded. I was like, oh
Mhm.
my God, like, okay. Like I like that she wants to show them off. But I also recognize that there may come a day, right? That maybe she doesn't. Maybe she wants to tuck them underneath her hair, wear the brown ones,
Yeah.
and that's fine too. Like whatever she's in the mood for, however she's feeling. And look, she's 8. She's she's got a long way to go. And there's a lot of changes she's going to go through in life. And she's going to probably feel differently at different points in her life about things, just like we all do. But kind of just like going with her lead, right? And right now she likes to show them off. She likes to decorate them. She likes to bling them out and everything. And good.
I
Like
love
I'll
that.
help her do that. And I love that. But again, the day comes when she just wants to tuck them underneath her hair and not wear headbands and use a double-sided tape, which sometimes she asks for now. Like, I don't want to wear the headband today. It messes my hair up too
Yeah.
much. Okay, cool. Like, that's fine. Well, let's just make sure that they don't fall on the ground. Someone steps on them. Like, make sure they're safe, but whatever she wants to do. So I think it's a lot like encouraging them to show it off, but also recognizing that like there may be points when they just want it to blend in, and that's okay too.
Yeah. But I think, like you said, giving them that confidence and that ability to like choose from the beginning is setting a good foundation for being comfortable. And, you know, when I see, and I don't know if Mila is old enough, my kids aren't quite yet, but you know, when I see other accounts like Michelle Hugh from Mama Hugh Hears is great. And other like deaf adults who have cochlear implants. Emily Segura is another one who is great, who are like very proud of their cochlear implants. Is I think so helpful for our kids to see as an example that, you know, these adults are, you know, putting stickers on their own and cool ear molds and, you know, are showing them off too, and that are proud to have, you know,
I know,
their
I love that.
cochlears or their hearing aids. Yeah, too, which is a great example for them. And I've also found, just as like a side note to parents, when I have like been involved in my kids' schools, I found that it also actually opens up conversations with other parents because their kids will go back and, you know, talk to them about, hey, we learned like this sign today because my 5-year-old signs, like he's not very verbal. And so they do like signing in his class, and you know, they'll go back and the parents will come to me and be like, so and so wants to learn sign language. Where do we learn? Or where are you, you know, learning? Or, you know, ask questions about the hearing loss for like education. So I also find that if you're like in the classroom, it also opens up conversations with the parents, and then you kind of get a chance to educate the whole family
Yeah,
about hearing loss too.
I agree. Like, well, for Mila, like all of the kids in her grade got to take home a copy of Mighty Mila. And so
Fun.
that coming home, you know, like some kids are great about telling everything about their day. My kids, it's like pulling teeth. I'm like, what'd you do today?
Oh,
They're
my
like,
boys don't know.
I don't like, what do you mean you don't
My
know? Like,
little girl does though. She's a very
oh,
chatty Cathy, but
you're
my
lucky.
boys like they're like, I ate lunch. Like,
Yeah,
okay.
that's kind of what I get. So for those kids, it's
Yeah.
like, I'm like, oh, don't like tell your parents that you learned about hearing loss today, about you learned about cochlear implants, like educate like your family. And so for me, like
Yeah.
sending a copy of the book to every family has helped with that, like that, because it comes home and it kind of encourages that conversation. And then they have a book on their, you know, in their home that has a deaf, you know, main character, and it just helps kind of promote that awareness across the family. But like I actually really like when parents come up to me and ask me questions. And it's funny because usually it's like, I hope you don't mind me asking this question. And I'm like, no, like ask, like I wanna, like, I want to talk
Yeah.
about this all the time. Like I think it's really interesting, and I really want you to learn all about it. Right. And so
Hmm.
I would say, like, you know, for anybody that may be listening, like, and the same goes for probably other parents of any kind of disability or difference, like, you know, kind of feel a person out. But like, I think a lot of people really don't mind talking about it and educating others, as long as it's all done in a kind way,
Hmm.
kind manner,
Yeah.
obviously. So, but I like talking about it, and I like talking to parents about it and helping them understand.
Yeah. And you can be open, you know, I did have one parent. So even if I'm going to tell parents, even if the question that the other parents give back, and I'm thinking about one example in particular, the question that you receive is not worded in maybe the best way, you can turn it around and respond with like grace and
Yeah.
education. So I had that happen. Everybody has been super, super great and wanting to know more, parents want to know more, getting, like I said, ASL classes for their kids and stuff. So I have not had a lot of like negative feedback, which is really great. But I did have one parent, and I don't believe they were trying to be negative, but the way that they worded their question, we were at like a birthday party, and my oldest was, I think he was in kindergarten, and he goes to a mainstream charter school, and my two boys, I think there's like one or two other kids with hearing loss, but mostly it's not kids with hearing loss. And so, I think what we have to remember as parents is like your kids are maybe and probably the first people with hearing loss that other kids have met and that their parents have met. And I had one parent like come up to the party and said, so and so, my son's cochlear, like, what's the deal with that? And it rubbed me, and I don't think that they were I really don't think that they were trying to be, I think they were trying to be curious, but the wording was not right. And I'm gonna admit I got a little offended because I'm like, this is my baby. Like in my head, I did, he's 5, you don't know what he's had to do for the first 5 years that like your kids didn't have to do. But instead I turned it around. So that's what I'm saying. When you get negative questions, you can turn it around and you can answer in a more graceful and educational way. And that actually like disarms the other person. Because I just answered like, well, he was born deaf. He got cochlear implants when he was 11 months old. So he's had hearing loss from birth. And we've done speech therapy for so and so years, and kind of laying them in on like part of the journey. And then their like attitude actually kind of changed like instantly. And then they were very curious, and they started like asking me questions, like, serious questions, really wanting to learn. So I know that sometimes, I've talked to parents and the questions can come off as like very direct or rude. But, my answer is that the way that you respond can still change the conversation as well.
I think you're so right. And I do think that most people don't realize, right? Like,
no,
I think most people don't realize whether it's like using certain terminology that may be considered like outdated or offensive. Like a lot of people don't realize that. And so I'll try to, in my response, use the correct term back to them. Or, even when people are like, I'm so sorry, it's like, and I think back to myself, I'm like, I probably was one of those people that was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But you don't have to be sorry. Like they're perfectly awesome and they're exactly how they are meant to be, right? Like there's nothing wrong, right? They just happen to hear differently. And so I think it's just kind of realizing that people sometimes just don't know what to say, and they like grasp at any like kind of response, and it's just not.
And people get awkward.
Yeah.
They don't know what to say, but that's what I said, if you can respond back, with more grace and more education, then
like
you can kind of instantly see them change and be like, oh, okay. And you can show them like the positive aspects, and then it's not something to be sorry about. And they were made perfectly the way that they were supposed to be. And, it's not a problem. And there are adults living this way all the time. And remember back, I mean, I remember the same thing. I think I felt a little sorry when I found out that my 2-month-old was deaf, because we have no hearing loss in my family. So, when we say I've like evolved my response, I wouldn't say that now, but that's because I've had like 8 years and 2 kids with cochlear implants, and I've had time to learn and stuff. But, I agree, if you think back to when you first found out or you first didn't know about hearing loss, like what was your initial reaction? Because as you've had your kids, you've probably evolved that reaction.
You need time to like process it, right? Like any big shift in the way that you picture your life or your children's life that like is altered in a way, whether you're at a point in your life where you just don't know, it's scary. Like, we didn't have any hearing loss in the family. Like, so we went into like tactical mode, like immediately, just trying to figure out like what was the next steps and like how do we best support her. I don't like, even with me, like I didn't like grieve up front. Like I just went pure tactical, but like along the way, like I grieved more so like for worrying about the struggles that she would have, but at the same time, because she was older when her hearing loss started, like I I think that that was a blessing for me because I already knew her as a person. Like I already knew that she had like a super spunky little spitfire personality. And like even immediately, I do remember back to that day, like the time when we found out. Like I remember saying to my husband, like, you know what, if anybody can, you know, I don't even like to use the term overcome because it's not something to overcome, but if anybody can face challenges that are different than like what we're, you know, what we've experienced, like it's her. Like she's super spunky and resilient
Yeah.
already as 1 years old, and she's gonna be fine. Let's just figure out how to support her and you know, the best way possible. And it is like I think you have to, like as parents, you just got to give yourself the grace to like feel all the emotions, but then like, you know, trust that you'll do a good job, trust that your kid will do well, even if you're in the moment of all the, and you know, not like in the fog, right? As Valley Gideon has her book, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
this is like a fog, and you know, people are going to tell you like it's all going to get normal, like it's all going to be just like part of your normal everyday life. It'll all be okay, and like it will, but you have to go through the journey to even to be able to look back and say, yeah, like everything is, you know, you can't just jump to that mindset. Like you have to work through it on, you know, as a family, to really get to the point where you do see and you know that your child is exactly how they're meant to be, and you were put here, you know, you are here to support them and help them as best possible. And we don't have all the answers. Like I'm always wondering, like, am I doing the right thing? Like, what am I doing? You know, like I even with the book, I'm like, why? Like,
Mhm.
should I have written a book like based on her? Like, is this too much? Like, and I try to follow her lead. And if at any point she's like, Mom, I don't like this book, that's it. They're off all the shelves like that. Like,
Mhm.
you know, and she luckily she loves it. But you know, there's no real handbook. You just gotta figure it
No,
out.
no, that's actually what I say at the end of all my podcast episodes is that there's kids don't come with a handbook, especially kids
No,
with hearing loss. So it's good that you're
no.
here.
Yeah, it's just learning
Yeah,
from
no, I
others,
agree.
right?
And, I want to respect your time, but my last kind of question and thought is what would you say to parents who are further along in this process with their kids and are thinking about or could step into some like more leadership roles, like, leaderships in the school or in their community or getting other parents together who have, kids with hearing loss and like a community group. How would you encourage those parents? Because I really like, as part of what we do here, to encourage parents and especially moms to kind of step into, if they want to, more like leadership roles. Kind of like, what did that look like for you? Did you expect to like kind of be a leader in this community?
It kind of all just came, like it all come right. Like I love doing like author visits. I love talking to kids. I go to a bunch of different schools. Like
Hmm.
for me, like it's amazing. And I love to get the message out that way. But for other people, it's a different path. And
Yeah.
I guess one like tangible thing that anyone can really do is like within your child's school, there's probably some kind of like parent teacher association, PTA, PTO, whatever it may be called. Like I think reaching out to like the president or whoever is in charge and just saying like, I'd like to help raise awareness about deafness and hearing loss, like whatever that may look like. You know, I don't know a school that's not trying to push inclusion, right? Like
Yeah.
inclusion and representation and awareness of differences and celebration of differences. Like I can't imagine that people would not get like a great response. And
Especially
whatever
if someone is like volunteering to take that on, because most
right.
schools may even want to, but
Right.
they're
Or
doing a
even
lot of other
saying
stuff.
like, I'll do
Mhm.
it as part of a team, right? Like it doesn't have to just all
Yeah.
be you. And it could be something
Right.
as simple as, hey, I'd like to do it depends on how comfortable you are as a parent, right? But like it could
Mhm.
be anything from like, hey, I'd like to start up an ASL after school program. Like if we can get some funding where we can bring in a deaf individual to teach
Mhm.
ASL, and maybe it's even like, even if there isn't funding, right? Like any families that come in to do it can pay like a nominal fee or whatever to do it, right? Like, can we do that after school? Or can I do an assembly with name your child's grade, right? Or several grades. Can I do an assembly where I read, read Mighty Mila, you can read a book, you can
Mm-hmm.
do a presentation, you can talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are all like really quick, like tangible things.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be working with the school to, I was talking to the head of the special education recently when we were doing the girls' IEPs for the year. And she was like, I mentioned that September's Deaf Awareness Month. She's like, oh, do you want to work together to try to like push that through the school? Because we celebrate, we have a whole month, the autism month, we do a lot for that. We do like, the
Mm-hmm.
Down syndrome awareness. And she was like, I didn't realize that September is Deaf Awareness Month. Like, let's work together. Like, reach out to me in the summer and we'll figure out how to like create some deaf awareness programs for the school. Like, oh yeah, like she brought that to me, right? Like, I mean, we're doing this
Yeah.
other week long of disability and everything in the spring, but like, yeah, sure. So I think that they're receptive to it, and yeah, just reaching out. I think the PTA is a good place to start, or
Mm-hmm.
just like director of special education in the school was probably another good spot.
Yeah. Or whoever you're connected with too, like
Yeah,
the teacher of
or
the
a teacher,
deaf, or
right?
yeah. Yeah. I know we have our school is doing an ASL camp this year
Oh,
for
that's
kids for the first time. Yeah. And the parents do pay for it. But I, as part of the camp, because I work with my state's EDI program, I came to the teacher of the deaf who's putting it on and her assistant and was like, would you be open to me trying to get a couple of like deaf adults to come in? And I was like, I don't want to take over your camp, but would that be interesting to you if they came and like did activities with the kids? They're really great. It's like a program in our state. They're volunteers. And they've been some of our like events, like other events, and they've been great with their kids. And they said yeah. And so I helped get a couple of like, there's like a deaf blind person who's going to go in and do some really fun activities with the kids during camp one day, and then another deaf adult, and they both use interpreters, so they are profoundly deaf.
great.
Which is another really great example. And the teacher of the deaf was like, yes, she is a fluent signer, and she's actually, I think, an interpreter as well. But she was like, it'd be great for the kids to see other people signing and not just me. And I was like, yeah, and they're bringing interpreters. So it's also really great for the kids to be exposed to like people using an interpreter and how to like interact with someone. And there's an interpreter there, and because it's kind of like a different thing. And so I did that. So yeah, there are definitely, if you have connections or you have different things that you can do that will add like to the school and to the school's value, I definitely, recommend, encourage you to step up and ask. It doesn't have to be a lot. Like you say, you could just go read Mighty Mila
Yeah.
books in like your kid's
I'm
classroom.
happy
It
to
could be
talk
like
to any
really
school
simple.
about coming in and even virtually and doing a reading with the kids too. Like
That's fantastic.
there's authors out there that do author reading. So even if it's not the parent
Oh,
that
wow.
doesn't feel comfortable standing up in front of the
Yeah.
class, like I work with PTOs and PTAs to like do like virtual author readings and Q&As and stuff like that too.
Oh,
So
great. Fantastic.
yeah, so that, I mean, I think there's a lot of different avenues that people can reach, kind of explore.
Yeah. Great. Well, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. My last question is, what is your hope for the books that you're creating, the kind of, I guess, business or brand that you're creating? What is your ultimate like hope for these and for this?
Yeah, I mean, my ultimate goal is for it to get out there everywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order to really like effectively promote awareness, and empower, deaf, hard of hearing kids. And again, like I said, like to really promote that awareness and celebration of differences and promote kindness, right, to others within the communities of individuals that have never met anybody that are, deaf and hard of hearing. So even getting it into like libraries and schools and into kids, individual kids' hands, like that's really important. I actually have, I think, a book donation program on my website. mightymila.com, where anybody can go on, and for $10 they can purchase a book that I donate to a number of different partner organizations. I work with a couple of hearing loss organizations where they get the book into the hands of kids when they get activated, to help them feel empowered. And I think it's also helpful for the parents too, because it's a crazy time, and to read a book about a deaf kid just being a full child and having fun, like it's helpful for the parents as well. So I would really love for the book just to continue to get out there. And I've been completely floored by the response. Like the book came out 3 years ago, and it's, over 10,000 copies have been sold already. And it's just like, really incredible, because just hearing from, like, I've heard from a Cochlear America's research scientist saying, like, it helped her explain to her child what she does, right? I hear from parents, educators, like it's nice seeing like the reach and the impact that it has, and just to kind of continue to get it out there would be wonderful.
Yeah, that is great. And that is so cool that you heard from a cochlear implant
Yeah,
scientist.
Cochlear America is one of their like
Wow.
lead
Hmm.
research scientists, said, like, my child's always wondering what I'm doing, and so I got the book and I
Oh,
read it to them, and they're like, this is why it's important what, like, mommy does all day long. So that
that's so
it
cool.
was cool. Like, I could never have predicted that. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that is so fun. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you talking to me and our parents today. Is there anywhere that you would like to tell parents to find you?
Yeah, they can go to mightymila.com, which is my website. I'm also on Amazon and online at Barnes and Noble, Target, Walmart, things like that. And again, don't miss out on like the free resources on mightymila.com, because there's activity packs actually that go along with each of the books. So I have like
Wow.
60-page activity packs that go along with each of the books that you can print out, like read to your kids, and then they can print out different exercises. They're all fun things, but they work on like language development, auditory skills, like comprehension, stuff like, sneakily teaching them while they're really having fun is like my way of doing things. And the only way my kids learn is when they're like tricked into learning, because they actually have fun doing it. So don't forget to download those resources, and like the All About Mighty Me editable presentation, if anybody wants to use that, and reach out. Like, I love talking to people, and I'm happy to chat with anybody that wants to.
Yeah, amazing. We'll definitely put all of that in the show notes as well, all of those links so that you can get found and people can find you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Oh
so
yeah,
much for coming
Instagram
on.
is,
Mhm.
oh sorry, I was gonna
Yeah,
say, I didn't even
no, you're good.
mention Instagram. I'm at Mighty Mila Stories, and Facebook
Okay,
at Mighty Mila. So if anybody wants to find me there, they can follow along the journey.
perfect. We'll get those in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.